matrix is a system, Neil. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters. The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
I was.
Look again. Freeze it.
Welcome back to another great episode of Dreams, Dollar, and Destiny. I'm one of your co-hosts, Porsche with the Soul Car Studio, joined by my colleagues, Miss Queen B, NumeraLytics, and Nick from Supreme Numerics. We're here to bring you another great episode. As you guys know, we always bring the real. Now, if you enjoyed the last episode that we did, where we talked about the commodification of spirituality, please like, subscribe that video, and share it with somebody who can also benefit from that information. We dropped some jewels in that last episode. I'm sure a lot of y'all got a lot of nuggets. Hopefully you got tons of value from it, and you would definitely do the same with this one. So let's go ahead and jump into tonight's episode. And the topic we're talking about today is cream. Corporations rule everything around me. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, right? Everything is controlled and ruled by some type of corporate entity. So from the moment you were born in that hospital, owned by a healthcare system, to the day you buried in a cemetery, and it's managed by a funeral conglomerate, corporations have like privately or quietly woven themselves in and throughout the fabric of our lives. So the food on your plate, the roof on your head, the water you drink, the medicine you take, trust me, all the news you consume, that is not for your benefit, nor is it great for your health, right? America was founded on these ideals of freedom and self-determination. But the nation that exists today operates like a operates less like a democracy and more like a corporation. And you're kind of figuring or trying to wonder what's going on, especially with this current administration. And you're trying to figure out how is it that they're able to get away with so much that they're doing and no one is stopping them, because we are being ran by a corporation. Yes, our president is CEO of the United States. So, hey, this is one where lobbying dollars in Washington work. As you can see, there's a lot of influence and power and money. So if you're a corporation, and most corporations have more money than the average person, they can get their influence in Washington, right? And so this is where regulatory agencies are staffed by various industries that are meant to police, but then you have a two-party system function on top of that, that really is what they call two different wings of the same bird, right? You're thinking you're in a democracy system, you're thinking you're for the Republican or the Democrats, but really it's the same chicken, right? It's no different. You're just on the left wing and this one's on the right wing, no different. So we are consumers before we are citizens. And we are at the data points like we've never been before, with all this different technology. And we're able to find out more information now, more so than ever, about who owns what and who's controlling what. So if you have a favorite company, right, just take time to Google who owns that company. Then once you find out who owns that company, Google who owns that company. And I can guarantee you it always leads back to like the same 5 companies, believe it or not. So it's kind of scary once you think about it, but this is what's controlling or operating here in America. And that's what, most of our lawmakers and decision makers are being ruled by. So cream is not a conspiracy theory. It is an operating system, y'all. And the first step to reclaiming your life is simply by waking up and reading the terms and conditions that you never even knew about nor agreed to, right? So we all kind of signed up for this system unknowingly. And that's one of the things that I think people are not aware of, because we played the Matrix clip. And the reason why we did that is because everybody sleep. I mean, at some point, you don't realize that the reality that you're living in was carefully crafted by social engineers, we should say, right? People who have power and money. The elite is what we like to call them. And it's just a small group of people, right? They call it the 1%. The 1% being ruled by, what is it? I think they said 200 families, right? It's a very small group of network of people that are ruling the world, believe it or not. And it's one of those things where you're trying to figure out, well, how did it start? And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We're going to give you a little bit of history, a little bit of background, and then also some actionable steps that you can take to kind of unplug yourself from this matrix. Because once you're aware, right, we want you to do better, right? And that's why we bring this awareness, is because we're trying to get people in a more sovereign state and for us to come together as a community and push back on these corporations. Because believe it or not, even if you don't believe in some of the activity that they have going on as far as your well-being, trust me, none of it is for your good. From the medical system, from the food system, to our government and our finance system, none of it was designed to help you, right, or improve your life in any kind of way. So let's jump into that. I'm going to start off a little bit about how this whole kind of system started out. Just give you guys just a little bit of background. Again, I'm not trying to give anybody a history lesson, but we should know where this kind of started from. What's the seed? Where did this? Because America itself is a corporation. It's quasi government, quasi corporation. And when we think about it being a corporation, it's one of those things where you have to look at the facts, right? Where's our capital? In Washington, D.C. Is D.C. part of any state or any part of the United States? No, it's not. It's on sovereign territory, right? It's complete corporate sovereignty. That's what DC is. And there's a lot of symbolism around the city as well that points to who the architects of the city and who were the masterminds behind orchestrating the government and the system that we, or the framework that we now operate in. Now, believe it or not, corporations didn't start here in America. The East, what was it? The Dutch East Indian Company that was founded in 1602. And then you have the British East Indian Company founded in the 1600s, about 2 years apart from each other. And so those were really the first two major corporations that we can recognize today that have basically transformed into all these big mega corporations that we have now. Because you got to understand, before money, right? There was, people didn't use money. There was no point for money. We were in our own communities and we would just barter. Hey, you have tomatoes, here's a leg of lamb, right? Or look, I have a bushel of peas. If you can give me, some corn, we'll swap. That's how we lived. We lived in communities. There was no place for money. Not unless you had to pay off somebody for a debt or some crime that you did. That was really the only place for money. So with the birth of these corporations, right, money had to become the order of the day, because how else can corporations survive? If they're not making money, they have to be profitable. And trust me, corporations are not trying to get paid in chickens, right? So they had to come up with a universal standard for, I guess you can say, currency to be circulated, which we came up with money. So as I said before, these corporations that started, about over 400 years ago, they are the framework that now everything else follows. And it's kind of crazy once you think about it, because all this was done in the name of capitalism. And there's nothing wrong with capitalism, but there is something wrong when the people who control the markets are inherently, how should I say, evil. So I wanted to kind of touch on that. I'm going to let my colleagues jump in on the conversation, and we're going to bring this to a boil at the end here. I think Queen B, she's covering a little bit of the entertainment side of everything. And my pal Nick over here, he's going to be covering the food industry as well, and just showing you how these corporations control our lives just from every aspect. Now, another thing is, when a lot of people don't know, is that the Federal Reserve, I know you've heard this term before, the Federal Reserve, that's where America's money is, right? That's who manages our money, prints our money, or whatever you want to say. That's who we borrow our money from. But have you ever thought about, why would we owe money to ourselves if we owned our own money supply? So that within itself is very questionable, because now you know that the Federal Reserve has to be a private corporation that has shareholders that are benefiting from the interest that we have to pay back from all the money that gets printed here in the United States. And so these people are quietly stealing your wealth, right? That's what's happening. It's blatantly happening in front of your face. But if you don't know what's happening, then you don't know what's going on, even though you're watching it. So let's go ahead and jump into some other parts of corporations and how corporations run your life. Because trust me, this is an eye-opening episode, and I hope you guys get a lot of value from this. So, Queen, let's talk about the media and how all this kind of ties in with the government and how the media and corporations control people through manipulation, right? Psychological.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Queen. Absolutely. That was a brilliant opening. So, yeah, I mean, the corporations really do rule everything around me and you. And, that's a nod to Wu-Tang Clan off their album Cream. Cash rules everything around me. And those two are really interchangeable, cash and corporations, because the corporation's bottom line is cash. So, Wu-Tang had it exactly right. It does rule everything around us, and the Matrix kind of wakes people up to that. I think, when the Matrix came out, people weren't really ready for that information, but I think now it resonates more with people because people are starting to see what's going on. We're in this age of Aquarius and the veil's being lifted, so people are starting to wake up to it. But yeah, definitely the corporations rule everything around me, right? And the average person really probably would think that, media, music, and entertainment, they're just like forms of art or they're forms of expression. And yeah, that's what they set out to be. That's what they were meant to be. But what we're really looking at when we're looking at the media, music, and entertainment, we're really looking at a system of influence, of power, and money. Okay. And that's really what it is. So whoever is funding that message is going to be the one that's shaping that narrative. So that's where we find ourselves in that crossroads, right? Because these corporations are the ones that fund everything. And like you said, there's only a handful of corporations that basically own everything in existence for consumer purposes in this country. So whoever controls that narrative is going to influence the people. So even if we just look at the media, the media doesn't report reality as it is, right? They put a spin on it. They frame it. You know, they get a script. Oftentimes you'll see a lot of the content creators looking at news outlets from other countries so they can get the real news about what's really going on around the world, because the American media is bought out. They've been bought by these corporations. So what gets covered, what they cover, it gets repeated, and they ignore the real stories, right? So they cover what they want to cover and what the messages they want to put out to you. The real stories get ignored, and then they continue to repeat these stories that they want us to kind of feed into. So whether that's us feeding our fear into that or just paying our attention to it, this is where they get us. And this is not a random thing that they do. It's not random. It's really by design, like you said. It really started with the inception of this country. And, I won't get on my soapbox with that, but we know the whole idea and the whole inception of this country was to make us prisoners of war and we were the first commodity in this corporation of the United States. And we continue really to be a commodity for this country. But getting back to those handful of corporations, they own a large portion of what everyone consumes every day. And their business model is to keep your attention. Okay. And guess what keeps your attention, family? Fear. That keeps your attention. Conflict. That keeps your attention. Division. That keeps your attention. Okay. Because attention is money. And especially for corporations, attention just equals dollar signs. I'm sure they have some type of whiteboard in their office where they say attention equals money. Okay. So this is what they do. And if it pays, it stays. And that's just the bottom line. So I'll kind of land my plane there. I do have some of the corporations. Portia, if you want me to talk about list of top corporations and show how they own all of the other corporations, I can put those up on the screen at some point.
And also talk about how you do have some journalists and artists that want to break out, like they want to expose certain secrets or things, and what happens to them, right? A lot of them wind up dead, um,
Hmm.
or they get silenced in some kind of way.
Right, right. And it's crazy because if we think about it, guys, so I'll just name like a few corporations,
Yeah.
the major media and entertainment conglomerate. So the first major one is the Walt Disney Company. And, we, a lot of us let our kids watch the Disney Channel, they watch the Disney movies. But Disney is very cynical and very like maniacal. They have a lot of sinister things that they do through Disney, even looking at all the Disney kids that, had issues in the entertainment industry coming up, like the Britney Spears and all, and they all have like a little bit of an issue, you know, a lot of them. So Walt Disney Company, this is all the other companies that it owns. Walt Disney owns ABC, ESPN, Disney Studios, Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilms, Hulu, and it controls a large portion of the film and TV streaming content. So that alone tells you, you know, if you look at all of those different things, they're all owned by Disney. And then when you look at someone like the Comcast Corporation, they own NBC Universal, they own NBC Pictures, Peacock, MSNBC, the CNSBC, so that's news. So that's one of the largest internet cable providers that distribute your news to you, and they're all owned by one corporation. So imagine if you have these families that control, you know, because there's a group of families that control our government, basically. Those are the owners of the corporation of America. And that's really why any president that gets in, they're really a puppet. They have to do what these families lead them to do. And this is how it works, people. So that's just giving you just a tip and just a taste of, you know, how these companies become huge conglomerates, you know, and they monopolize the music industry, they monopolize the media and the entertainment industry, and whatever message and agenda they want to feed and push is the one that they feed and push, regardless of whom or what.
Mm-hmm. That's true, Queen. That's true. And thank you for telling us about the companies, because you know, I think a lot of people aren't aware that you look at, you're seeing one thing, but you don't realize they're controlling the whole thing. Who is that? Somebody just bought out Paramount. I know CBS controls Paramount, but somebody
I'm
just
going to
bought.
tell you, Queen. Hold on, because they're on my list. Let me see
Was it
who's got
Paramount or
Paramount.
Universal? One of those major studios just got bought out, and then at
It's
the end of it,
I think it's Universal and Paramount. I
Universal.
think they actually merged, and they must
Okay.
be merged under the Comcast Corporation because that's
And
who owns them.
Comcast is owned by Larry Ellison, right? Who owns Oracle, I think, or his
Mhm.
son, right? They're the billionaires, and it all goes back because their money goes towards who? Israel. So I mean, if you look at the root of who ownership of a lot of these companies, it goes back to that, and that's who's really controlling the media here in the United States, unfortunately. You know.
Yep. So I'm going to be putting the banners up of the corporations just so I don't have to name them all. So then people can read them for themselves who owns these corporations. So the banners will be, you know, a little bit simultaneously. I'll be putting them up as Nick is going through what he wants to state, you know, his introduction and everything. I'll be putting these up so we can see who owns these companies.
Yeah, and so we touched on the media, we touched on the financial, where the corporation started from, right? Way back in the 1600s, created the system of capitalism for monetary gain and power, right? Because he who owns the money creates the rules. So Nick is going to touch upon how our Food and Drug Administration, well, not administration, corporation, um, how they affect our daily lives and if they have our best interests or not.
Yeah, and I'll actually connect some of these dots and
Mhm.
touch on the media too, because I have a background in the media, so I witnessed some of these things too as I was going through my undergraduate program and getting that real world experience. But first of all, peace and love to the family out there, Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny family. Welcome back to episode 4. You know, 4 is my number, so you know, I love this. And I got to give a shout out. Got to give a shout out to the Black Dot because he's the one that I got the cream acronym from. I'm not sure if he's the originator of it, but I heard him say it. Corporations rule everything around me on his podcast, and I was like, you know what? That's kind of fly right there.
I'll shout out to Black Dot.
Yeah, yeah.
Shout out to Black Dot, but we're actually definitely going to make sure that we shout out Wu-Tang because he got that from them and he just switched it up a little bit. But we know that that's
Oh
a
yeah,
Wu-Tang.
Yeah, we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
give love
That's
to
common.
folks, right? We're gonna give
Yeah,
love.
yeah. That's
You
common
know, I'm
knowledge.
giving
Right there.
Wu-Tang flowers all day. You know, that's my camp. So, you know, I'm going to give them flowers all day.
Oh yeah, you
And
know
they
they.
just made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So,
Yeah,
even
they
though I know
did.
we're talking about corporations and all that, that we could even talk about that, that's a part of it. But go ahead, Nick.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. It's all connected,
Mm-hmm.
especially when y'all just went down that little mini rabbit hole and found the owner of the owner of the owner and who they funding. That's what we talk about when we talk about following the money, and we're not even going to scratch the surface on all of it because it goes way deeper than what we're expressing and showing you all in this episode. Like the Queen Bee often mentions and alludes to, Neely Fuller and those areas of human activity. We're only touching on a couple of those areas of human activity, but the corporations rule all the areas of human activity when you really break it down and go into it. But the money is the bottom line, and also the control. So if they can make the money and control the masses simultaneously in the process, that's to their benefit even more. And also with the media, it's resources, it's employees, it's workers, it's equipment, everything that it uses, especially the news media, is funded by advertising dollars. That's why when you used to open up a newspaper or magazine, these days some things are still in print, but you have to go online to read the news and read magazines. You're going to see advertisements for products, services. If they don't get those advertising dollars, they're not going to operate anymore unless you're a government funded media outlet. But of course, the government is a corporation, and those corporations influence that corporation. It's all connected, whether it's government funded or privately funded institutions. But the control aspect of it, they control the masses through the media to influence how they think. And that serves as a distraction from all of the BS and diabolical activity that these people who are running things, I call them the archons now because I don't like calling them elite because there's nothing really elite about them, but I call them the archons. They can distract you from all the BS, because if everyone was really conscious of what was going on, all the craziness that's going on, you can even look at the Epstein files and how they put it out there and people had that moment of shock at the beginning, but now they just kind of moving it along and people are going back to regularly scheduled programming. But if the masses weren't distracted, they probably would rebel. And that's not just the media, that's also food too. So you might be wondering, how's food and drugs and pharmaceuticals connected to that? Of course, the bottom line, they make their money, but what does the control piece come into? So I'm going to paint a picture for y'all and see if y'all can connect the dots and see where I'm going with this. And only a few corporations own the majority of the brands, which we'll come back to momentarily. So I'll name a couple of these corporations and some of the brands that you may have heard of when it comes to food. And we're talking about restaurants, and we're also talking about just your products that you pick up at the grocery store and you might consume at home. So starting with those products. And I'll also mention that some of these corporations own multiple types of brands too, not just food. Some own food brands as well as household products too. So I'll start with Mars. You might have heard of Mars, the candy company. If you're if you go, if you're an elder, you probably recognize Mars as a candy company.
Now don't be calling me no elder, Nick.
That term.
Oh, listen, I don't know Mars. I don't recognize Mars as a candy company. I know the individual types of candy.
They're M&Ms, right?
The name of the company that owns them is Mars. So M&Ms, Snickers,
Right.
yeah. Also, Uncle Ben's is owned by Mars, and they own the Kellanova brands that produce Pringles, Cheez-Its, Pop-Tarts, and they also own the pet food too. Then you have Nestle. Man, Nestle owns a lot of stuff. Kit Kat, Nescafé, Gerber, like the baby food, Cheerios, San Pellegrino, Toll House, Stouffer's, Lean Cuisine, Coffee Mate, DiGiorno, Haagen-Dazs. Then you got Coca-Cola. We know Coca-Cola, that's a soda company, but they own more than just soda. They own other types of beverages besides soda. Kraft Heinz, they own about 200 brands. And of course, you know Heinz from the ketchup, Kraft with the cheese. They also own Oscar Mayer. You heard of Philadelphia cream cheese, Velveeta cheese. You better not be using no Velveeta cheese when you be baking your macaroni and cheese. But Lunchables, Capri Sun. Then you got General Mills. Those are the cereal folks. But besides cereal, beyond breakfast, they own over 100 brands, including Betty Crocker, you heard of them, Yoplait, the yogurt folks, Pillsbury, Doughboy, woohoo, and Nature Valley, aka crumbs all over the place, bars. Kellogg's, they own a bunch of brands, another cereal brand. PepsiCo, not just soda, they also own the Tostitos, where you get your chips and your salsa, Sun Chips, Lay's, Doritos. They own about 500 brands.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut.
Yeah, I didn't get to the restaurants yet. I'm still talking about, your grocery store food. I'm about to get to the restaurants. I got two more brands to mention. Mondelez International. They own Oreo, Nabisco, Trident, and 50 other brands. And Unilever. They own Ben & Jerry, Lipton, Knorr, and about 400 brands in total. So that's just what you see in the grocery store. Now let's talk about the restaurants. I'll let you know where I'm going with this in a moment. But maybe you might, if you start connecting the dots, maybe you started picking up on it when I was talking about those food brands. Now, restaurants includes both fast service, like your fast food, and also your full service restaurants. Yum Brands has about 49,000 restaurants, and they fall under the umbrella. Under their umbrella includes KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. Inspire Brands, 33,300, 333. Arby's, Baskin Robbins, Buffalo Wild Wings, Dunkin' Donuts, Sonic, RBI. They own Burger King, Popeyes, Darden. Now we're getting into your full service, where you sit down, gotta have a waiter in their business casual, white shirt and your slacks, pour your water for you, white tablecloth maybe. They own Olive Garden. Ooh, Olive Garden, breadsticks and salad. Unlimited too. Longhorn Steakhouse, Ruth Chris. Now, one that I didn't have time to find out who owns is the Cheesecake Factory, because we have all of this discourse on the internet, especially with Black folks, about what counts as a date. Is Cheesecake Factory acceptable? Is Longhorn Steakhouse acceptable? But Darden owns Ruth Chris too. Ooh, Ruth Chris. Put my pinky up for that one.
I know, right? That's a nice one.
Yeah, that's a nice thing out of those.
Bought them out. They must have just bought them out.
Yeah. I didn't get that deep into the research. Then you got Bloomin', who owns Outback. You got Jollibee, who owns Smashburger. You have Focus Brands, who owns Auntie Anne's, Carvel, Cinnabon. All right, now I think that's enough right there. I don't know if anybody picked up on any cues yet about what all of these restaurants and food brands have in common, but I'll tell you what I saw, what I noticed when I was reading off these companies and these brands. I noticed that the majority of these brands are poisoning us.
Really? You don't say. You don't say.
Yeah.
I feel great.
Well,
yeah, I'm seeing a bunch of ultra processed packaged foods. I'm seeing a bunch of foods and condiments that have ingredients that are banned in other countries, but
Yes.
they can be used.
Not illegal here.
Yeah, they're not illegal here. And that has that dual purpose there. The bottom line, because using those processed harmful chemicals creates a longer shelf life, and that supports their bottom dollar, but also the control aspect, because those ingredients and those products, they make people sick, and on the physical health, and then on the mental, spiritual health, they can interfere with you reaching your higher consciousness also on the spiritual and the physical side. And when they do that, that keeps you from self-actualization. It keeps you from attempting to unplug from the matrix. That's how they keep you in control. That's how they feed off of us. We are their power source. That attention, our dollars, us getting in line with the program. That's what I see when I read off these brands and how these few handful of corporations, I think I barely broke double digits when it comes to the corporations that own all these brands. I don't even think I broke double digits when it came to the restaurant side of it.
Yeah, you probably didn't even hit 10, right?
No, I don't think so.
And also, Nick, I like to bring up the whole vegan thing, because a lot of people say, well, I don't eat that. I don't eat meat. I'm vegan. I'm this and that. And, that's great. I'm not knocking the vegan thing, but the problem comes in with that when you go to the beyond meat, or you're looking for the alternatives that's not meat, but it's still a plant-based product. It's plant-based because it comes out of a plant, right? Mm-hmm. I don't mean a plant like a tree growing. I mean like a chemical plant. And so that is making you sick. Yeah, you're vegan, but you're looking for these alternatives that are not real meat. And you're eating plant-based products, which are chemical-based, that are making you sick. So they even make you on the vegan level.
And you're eating all that stuff, but you're not eating any fruits or vegetables. That's the funny thing about it. Not eating one piece of fruit, not one vegetable, but you're eating the fake chicken nuggets and the fake burgers and all that. I think that's so crazy how
right. So that industry put a number on the people trying to go healthy. You see what I'm saying? There's no escaping. You thinking you going healthy, you being, like you're saying, leveling up your soul, cleaning yourself up on a physical level. And then eating tofu is like the worst because it's soy based, and soy has a lot of estrogen. And men eating a lot of estrogen, not good.
Right. Yeah. And so, and then when we get into the estrogen and the soy and all of that and those type of chemicals, that's when we're getting into a whole other topic, another one of those areas of human activity. I think that might fall under the sex area of human activity, but that's for another show. But it's all connected. You see how it's all connected.
To stop from reproducing, right? Because you can find soy in everything these days. If you read the label, I was trying to get some smoked sausage the other day, and it has soy. I'm like, why they got soy in it? Why it's got to be in the smoked sausage?
Right. And you notice with all these brands that I named, I didn't name any produce brands. I didn't name any companies that grow vegetables or grow fruit. It was all processed food, processed ingredients, processed condiments, drinks, all of that.
Yeah.
And you don't know about the restaurants either. All you see is the food when it comes out. You're not actually in the kitchen when they're preparing it.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head about they make the food that makes us sick so they can make the drug that's supposed to treat us, not cure us, because the drugs are not there to cure.
Oh, drugs. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you for reminding me. So the pharmaceutical industry, the companies that have the greatest shareholding of the pharmaceutical industry, that's an even shorter list. So the largest shareholders in Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson, 3 corporations.
And those were the 3 that were doing the jab for people back in 2020. Those were
Yeah,
the
the
top
Pfizer.
three. Yeah, Pfizer, Merck, and
Johnson and Johnson.
Johnson and
It was in
Johnson.
the
Johnson,
Janssen,
exactly.
their German name, Janssen, right?
Yeah,
Jan. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So why don't you take a guess at the companies that own those three?
One.
Well, it's three. It's three. Well, two of them you'll be able to guess. You should be able to guess.
But I do know there's another company called Bayer. You know, Bayer makes the pills. They're a pharmaceutical
Yeah.
company. They
Yep.
also own a food producing company, Monsanto.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah. I forgot about Monsanto. Yeah, because they got the what was it, the GMO thing
The
going on?
GMO.
GMO seeds, yeah, they
Oh
control the
yeah.
seeds, the
The
pesticides, and
seeds,
the crop
yes. The
systems.
Monsanto
Yeah.
seeds.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
Bayer, who's a pharmaceutical company, owns the food producer. So tell me if that's not the snake eating its tail, right? It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, and I said we didn't mention any produce companies, but there's your produce right there, the Monsanto seeds growing the
yep.
fruits and
Right.
vegetables.
Yeah, your
Yes.
fruits and vegetables. Now let's get back to what you said about there's only
Yeah,
two companies.
yeah. Well, it's three, but two of them are I'm sure you know. I'm sure
Johnson
you've
and
heard of.
Johnson.
Well, that owns those. That's what I'm saying. It's three companies
Oh,
that
it's
own
another company
those.
that owns those.
So it's probably either Nestle, because Nestle owns a lot. I would say either Nestle or one of the Coca-Cola companies or something like that.
Or
Oh no,
Unilever.
these are different companies that I didn't mention for food, but
Oh,
Oh,
I'll
okay.
go ahead and tell you.
Okay.
Vanguard. If I said
oh,
Vanguard, what's the next one?
BlackRock.
BlackRock, and then SSGA. Those have the largest ownership in those three pharmaceutical: Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson and Johnson.
And so investment firms.
Yep.
And you follow the money
Yeah.
back to that goes ties back into Israel.
So yeah,
Always.
all that money ties back either into their own pocket or into, like you say, Israel or whatever foreign interests the government has to continue their plan of world domination. Because let's keep it honest. I mean, that's what they want. They want the one world order under a one world domination, and they want to be the leads of it. It's the main 13 families that own everything in America, and basically they're the ones driving all of this stuff. The Rockefeller family is the one that took herbal based medicine, you know, how we had herbs and we did it all natural. They took all of our herbs and our natural remedies, stole that information, took it to a lab, got scientists to learn how to create the synthetic compound of the elements. And that's what we get as pills. That's our prescriptions. It's the synthetic, it's all based on herbal medicine, but it's the synthetic lab made
Chemical
properties that
compound.
we get as medication. So they're doing the same thing with the food. You know, we got now the 3D printers, they're 3D printing meat, they're cloning meat to have meat printed to sell meat. They're also, you know, even they say a lot of us are consuming human meat, that all the humans that are missing, the children that are missing, they say that is the meat that's going into some of these fast food joints, that's going into their burgers and all that. So you really have to use your discernment when you're dealing with these companies and what you're putting into your body. Your body is your temple, and that's the way that you have to, you know, that's the way that you have to move on this plane. So you have to take care of your body. You know, you got to take care of it, and you got to watch what you're putting in your body, because it doesn't make sense that, like Nick said, it's a conglomerate, right? They have a monopoly on the food, on the drugs, on the entertainment, on the music. The Federal Reserve is a part of it. That's the major part of it. And like Portia said, why would we have to owe money back to ourselves when we're just printing the money? What kind of sense does that make? So that lets you know that it's a pyramid scheme. It's basically a pyramid on a grand scale that none of us probably could even fathom to understand, because of the amount and the number that they have to kind of get to make it work for the billions of people that they produce this for.
Yeah, and you said something really powerful, Queen, about how they got rid of the herbal remedies and everything else, and told people anybody who use herbs were quacks and all this stuff. Don't trust it, and
Mhm.
plant medicine doesn't work. But they also did that from there's this channel on YouTube called Tartaria, and they talk about the old world before everything was modernized. And one of the things they talked about before the modern medical system, Rockefeller made it a mission to get rid of these cathedrals. They were like, oh, the cathedrals are churches. They weren't churches. They were really like healing sound baths for people, and people actually going there to get healed. They had these elaborate bells set to different frequencies and tuned to the 428 and all that, when 432 and the 528, and actually healing people with frequency. So they did a big push to get rid of a lot of those buildings so people wouldn't be able to go heal themselves through that frequency. So a lot of the natural remedies were shunned, thrown away, or whatever, or said that they were useless, so they could indoctrinate this new medical system and have you from start to finish on their teeth, right? Because you have people, like you're saying, when you get born in the hospital, you're already in the healthcare system. When you get sick, the first thing they do is put you on medicine. They never cure you. They just want to treat you and keep you going, right? So you can continue to pay that medical bill. And another thing that I remember, when my great grandmother was alive, she never went to the hospital, right? My grandmother's older now. She got to go to the doctor, everything, this and that, because they realize they capitalizing off the elderly, right? You don't necessarily have to be sick, but the fact that now you got to go to the doctor every day, like that doesn't make sense. And so you got to realize what the system is for. It's there to suppress, oppress, and depress you. Because the question is this: if they're able to print money, right? Because we've seen them do it, and they print money all the time for war.
Yeah, when they get ready for when it's something for when they need it for.
But why am I paying taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I paying taxes? Oh, because that's another level of control over you. And to be honest with you, the whole system would collapse if everybody stopped participating. If we decided today, hey, I'm not going to work, I'm not paying taxes, I'm not doing this and that, it's going to collapse, because those little 300 people that we call, like you said, the archons that are sucking the energy from us every day, there's only 300 of them. It's billions of us. So we all decided to get together and say, you know what? I'm not playing their game anymore. I'm not going to be a part of the system anymore. I'm not going to work. We're going to find a way to work as a community to get things done and work outside of that. They're going to be hurt. But the problem is some people won't do it. A lot of people are not going to do it because they're afraid.
A lot of people won't.
Yeah, they're afraid.
I'm just gonna keep it real. Like I mentioned it to one of my friends, just like, texting, playing around or whatever, I was like, yeah, we all need to stop going to work tomorrow so we can stop being a slave on this planet. I was like, we didn't get put on this planet to work as slaves. Like everything that we need on this planet was provided for us from the planet. So we didn't, we should be able to eat the apples off the tree. We should be able to go to the well and get the spring water. We shouldn't have to pay for this stuff. So I just mentioned it, like, we all need to stop going to work. And then she's like, oh, well, how am I going to, what she say? How am I going something? They going to take my card. And I'm like, you ain't going to need your card. Like, you're not going to need your card. That's like, we're going to barter. We're going to change the way that this is done. Like, we're going to reimagine and rewrite the world as we know it to better suit the people and the people's needs. You're not going to need all that kind of but that's the mindset. You're distracted and you're stuck in your thought about your bills, your car note, your cell phone, or how you going to get on the internet. Like, you worrying about mundane crap when they're basically using this stuff against you to hold you down spiritually. But the problem is people aren't in touch with their spirituality. They're not in tune with themselves. And that's why we do what we do, to try to wake people up, to get them in tune and in touch with themselves, know thyself. So once you start knowing yourself, then you really start to question this system, because you're like, oh, y'all are trying to kill me. Once you get conscious and you wake up, you can see all the ways that they're trying to kill you every single day.
Yeah, this is the energy extraction system, right? This is the energy extraction planet. So they're going to siphon energy from you through your emotions, through your labor, right? Through your spirituality. However they can get it, they're going to feed off of you until you die. And think about that, folks. You are food for these people until you die. They manipulate you on a daily basis.
Yep. And then even when you die, like you said, Portia, that's a corporation. Do you know how big business funerals are? Funeral homes, funeral parlors, funeral directors. That's huge business in America.
The casket.
Huge.
Yes.
It's a huge business. And a lot of us can't afford, funerals cost over $20,000 today. It costs over $20,000 to bury somebody. Why would you pay $20,000 to put somebody in a free ground? Like,
you're gonna dig them back up later. Like, what's the point?
I mean, they got to make it make sense at some point. Maybe they don't, because they have people so distracted by all of this entertainment. And what I really do want to tell you guys, entertainment isn't just a distraction, you guys. Entertainment is direction. And if you don't direct your own attention, someone else will. So are you going to continue to allow others to direct your attention and to direct your, your life force to something that's feeding only them? It's not feeding you. What are you getting out of it besides being dead tired every day at the end of the day? You get to your weekend, you can barely do stuff on your weekend because you got to take that Sunday to recalibrate yourself, do your laundry or whatever you got to do to get back on that horse on Monday.
Yeah, and I think it's really imperative that people really pay attention to what we're saying now, even this time, because we keep hearing about AI and robots and all this stuff taking jobs and all this stuff, and that's part of the system. And if you're that person, like your coworker, like you said, that was stuck about, well, how I'm gonna put gas in my car and this and that, well, they got you. They got
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh yeah,
because you're going to be
she's
on their system, because you're going to feel like
yeah.
you need them, and that's what they
Yeah.
want. They want you to
Yeah.
need them, when in actuality you don't. You don't need them. You don't need the system. We can all come together as a community, learn how to grow our own food, right? Have our own self-sustaining community. We can even have our own currency if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Queen. Absolutely. And then I just want to touch a little bit because I didn't go through all my topics. I just kind of talked about the media a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the music now because, we all know music is frequency. So, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, and it's repetition. They repeat these things in music. So whatever is repeated becomes normalized. And that's why you see the co-opting of hip hop, which started back in like the late 80s when they started coming out with like gangster rap and stuff like that. That's when the labels really started to take an interest in hip hop because they started to see that the message they started to see, first of all, how lucrative hip hop was, right? They also started to see how the message that we were doing in hip hop was empowering us. It was empowering the Black youth. Okay. And then this is when it had to get co-opted and they had to come in and say, hold up, we can't be having y'all spreading this good message out. We need to have something different, right? So whether or not, it can be argued whether or not, the artists were already working on it or whatever the case, however it came about. But I can tell you one thing, once the record labels got a hold of it, they monetized on it. They capitalized on gangster rap. And that was the message and the narrative that they started to continue to put out. And this started in the late 80s. And that's when the major record labels started really starting to sign hip hop artists, but they had to sell this gangster rap. Like they had to rap negatively. And we touched on it a little bit in one of the other episodes, but we didn't go as deep as to say, even like you said, how some of the artists are like speaking out against this stuff and they want to be against it, but they really can't in a way. Well, yeah, they want to be against it, but it's either that or you're out of it, right? So a lot of the artists will just do it because they want to get famous, right? And what they're doing is the artists that come on now, like they pay you to be ignorant. Like Meek Mill actually stated this, and a few other rappers have stated this, that they tell you you get paid such and such amount for saying the most ignorant thing on the track that you can say. Come up with the most ignorant. Come up with the most ignorant, trashiest, nastiest thing that you can say. And that's how you're going to make your contract. That's how you're going to make your money. So, this is intentional. They do this intentionally. And then one other thing I want to say about the music is, like I said, it's repetition. So now you're getting this repeated negative message. It's being broadcast across airwaves, right? And even Michael Jackson talked about that. He talked about the repetitiveness in the message, the negativeness in the music. And that's why he was who he was and made the music that he made. Okay. So this is what they do. They don't want us to heal each other. They don't want us to make music, because music heals, and it can heal us. They don't want that. That's why they did what they did to him. And it's so funny because now that his movie's coming out, they're still trying to smear his name. Like the movie barely didn't even come out yet, and that Rotten Tomatoes, all these different media outlets are giving it bad reviews when everyone else that's going to see it saying how great it is. But the media is trashing it. Now I wonder why the media is trashing his movie, because we got these e-files out. We know that he was protecting the children from these e-files and all these people. So they're still on his case. The man been dead since 2009, and they're still trying to smear his name. So this just shows you how deep the rabbit hole goes about how much that the links that they will go through to try to control you. Okay, because this is what they do, and we know, we look up to some of these artists. So and then you got the kids looking up to some of these artists. So if the artists are coming out saying the most ignorant thing, what you think the kids are going to be? This is why we have a generation that glorifies this type of like behavior, and this behavior has been normalized, like Nick said, with people, is Cheesecake Factory acceptable for a date and all this kind of stupid stuff. Like 20 years ago, we wouldn't even had time to think about nothing like that as a community. Like, it's just stupid stuff that we're consumed with. And it's like, it gets started and it starts getting repeated, and that's how it spreads. So it's easy for them to control the narrative. I mean, they own everything. So whatever narrative they want to put out is what they put out. And this is what people, they flock to it. They flock to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, have y'all noticed that they'll let maybe one or two quote unquote positive artists, just to pacify everybody, to make them believe that there's some sense of balance with the ignorance, by having, a couple, not too much though. They can't be too revolutionary.
Really, it's only even one right now, but yeah, you're right. They'll try to sprinkle one or two in.
Yep, yeah, to give you that illusion that there is some positivity out there. But at the end of the day, that's still the bottom line, because they own that too. They own that artist and their catalog and their music too. If they're
so any moment that they want that artist to compromise themselves, they can make them do it. They have the power to make them compromise themselves at any given point.
And also think about how they erased R&B and neo soul. Remember, neo soul was really, really popping like in the early 2000s, mid 2010s. Yeah,
because that was love making music.
Exactly. Making music. They erased that genre of music. Yeah. All those artists, like, you don't hear nothing from them. They stopped supporting them, doing anything.
You know what they did, Portia? They took that away and they gave us auto-tune. They gave us auto-tune, and they gave us that kind of pop music that kind of wants to mimic R&B, but it's really like a poppy type of.
It's Chris Brown. It's like, oh, let's get to kind of music. It's no love.
Yeah, and it's no love, and why you think R. Kelly's in jail? That's why R. Kelly, because I'm not here to indict what nobody did. I don't know what the man did or what he didn't do, but what I do know is he didn't do nothing worse than what's in them Epstein files. I do know that.
Yeah.
I know he didn't do nothing worse than that. So how come all of those people are running free, but he is the one in prison? Diddy is the one in prison. Okay, so when it doesn't fit their narrative, they take them down. That's what they do.
When you don't work for them. Because, Prince was always an advocate for that. He always wanted to be independent, had the right to his masters and all that stuff. Wrote the word slave, changed his name so he could escape out of that imprisonment that the record companies want to put you under. And when you sign those contracts, it's an in perpetuity. That's why in order for him to get out of the contract, he had to change his name to a doggone symbol. Remember Prince running around with that symbol? Everybody was still calling him Prince, but legally he couldn't be called Prince because the record company owned his name. That was his God-given legal name on his birth certificate. And they were like, no, we own that. Well, how does that work?
Absolutely right, Queen. And let me double down on that. That's why they killed Michael, because he beat them at their own game. He bought that catalog. He was giving all the older Black artists their music back. Lionel Richie gave him his music back. I think he paid for a couple of the brothers' funerals and stuff like that. That were Sam Cooke, a couple of the brothers, Jackie Wilson. He did a lot for those artists, and he owns the masters to all of the music that Sony owns.
Beatles. That was the main thing. It was the Beatles.
Yeah, it was the Beatles was the main thing, but there was so much more. It's a plethora of, it's all the artists, it's all of them. Eminem, all of that was in there. Not just the Beatles was the biggest name.
Yeah, the biggest name. That was the one.
Yeah, but it was all of the artists. So the thing is, when he beat them at their own game, they definitely had to take him out. They couldn't let, especially him being a Black American, let him run around with the masters to control the music industry. And what was he doing? He was allowing people like SWV to use his beat for free. Nas, use it for free. You didn't have to pay him no royalties on that. They didn't like that. They want their money. They're not playing with their money.
Yeah, and I'm not condoning what Bill Cosby did at all, but they didn't go after him until he tried to buy NBC. So
They
the
didn't
bill
go
was
after
good.
him till he tried to
Right,
buy
he was making
NBC,
big.
which tells me he probably didn't do those things at all. He probably didn't do those things at all. Maybe did, maybe didn't. But y'all wasn't worried about it, like you said before. He tried to buy NBC and have some type of real influence over a community of people that they never want to wake up. They
Exactly.
never want us to wake up. Because the minute that we, and I'm talking to our Black American community right now, and it's about all of us, but it's really us, because this is our land. The atrocities that happen here, everything we're talking about tonight starts with us, guys. It starts with us, like you said, back in 1607. That all starts with us. Okay. All of this is based on us as a people, keeping us subjugated, keeping us spiritually down, because when we are spiritually strong, we can make anything happen. We can move any mountain. We can destroy any conglomerate. We can take the whole system down when we get ready, but we're not ready because we're still partying and bullshitting.
Yeah, but let me
Based
tell you.
on the distractions that they're feeding us.
Yeah. And you touched on something really good, because when you were talking about how back in the 90s, before they try to infiltrate the system, they had that prison the pipeline meeting. But let me tell you what sparked that. What sparked that was the Million Man March. That got them really afraid to see that many black men congregated peacefully, right? All in one area. You talking about a million black men. That's why it's never happened. It will never happen again. When they saw that, they got scared, because they know if we come together, we're gonna be too doggone powerful. And we already came, they know we have the power to come together when they did that. And so they had to dismantle that. And that's when they were trying to get Tupac to go the gangster rap and then create that beef, that East Coast, West Coast thing. And that's how the whole thing started from there. And it all came down from the Million Man March. Because prior
You're
to
absolutely right.
that was it. That was the apex. I ain't gonna say, right? The opposition, whoever you want to say, saw that and they got scared. So you're right. Whenever they see us congregate and come together like that, oh, it's powerful, it's mighty, and they get to shaking in their boots.
Absolutely.
And so they had to bring us down through the prison, the pipeline.
Through the prison, the pipeline, through the food, like Nick said, poisoning our food.
But the rap music changed. It was the music that changed the frequency, that changed the outcome of a lot of people, right? The drugs, they glamorized
the frequency, the drugs, and the food too, because they were putting hormones in the food. So they're putting hormones in the food to change our genetic structure. And the mother's eating that, that's automatically changing the baby's DNA. They did the study with the frogs. I forget the name of the synthetic chemical that they used, but they changed male frogs into female frogs with this chemical.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same chemical that they're putting in the water, you guys. It's the same one.
They showed you an Undercover Brother. It's supposed to be a comedy, but they showed you that they were poisoning the chicken in the malt liquor, right? That's because they were targeting us specifically for malt liquor. I didn't see them target Chinese or Spanish or no other type of group of people. They were targeting us specifically for those things.
Exactly. And this is all I want people to see. I want people to understand it. And this is not about anyone else. Okay. No. This is not about downing anyone. This is about talking what the real facts are, what the real crux of why this country is the way it is, why it continues to be this way. And it's all based on them keeping foundational Black Americans asleep, keeping us unaware of who we are and what we're capable of, keeping us in a dormant phase. I'm not going to get in all to my 7Ds, because I got 7Ds cultural syndrome practices. And the phase that we are in is in a dormant phase. A lot of us are waking up, but we're dormant. And we need to move from dormant to deployment.
Right. All right. Nick, do you have anything to add before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, we kind of got down the line now, so I don't want to go.
We're always down the line. Nick, we're at the end of the line, Nick.
Yeah,
I don't want to go too far back.
Whatever you had to add, because I'm just going to get to what people can do to get out of this.
We can go to that.
Ready.
Okay.
We can go to that. Now,
I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I want people to know that they
positive messages, because you know me, I just had to.
I got to go with the positivity. That's what we're here for. We're here to make people aware, but also give them positive energy, right? And feed them with
Right.
knowledge that's going to help them, kinetic knowledge that's going to help move them into a better situation. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get you in a better state, right? And if we all can come together and lead this matrix together, the more the merrier, right? There's strength in numbers, and that's what we need to realize, y'all. There's strength in numbers. So yeah, you might feel like, well, how can I go against a system that's been in place for 100 years and I'm just not fine? Don't worry about that. Let's get together. Let's come together and let's grow, right? So we can get stronger on this, and then we can build our own communities. And that's really what it's about, because we're not going to survive in this system, y'all. The system is coming to an end, right? When Neptune moved into Aries, we already knew there was something going to be shaken up, right? You're talking about a planet that doesn't move for 100 years, right? And it hasn't been in Aries since what, 1200 years? Come on now. So at the end of the day, we ought to know that this system can no longer sustain. Plus, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. This is a complete teardown and rebuild. When people are talking about a reset, they're not using that word lightly. There's a reset coming, y'all, right? And either you're going to prepare for it or get reset and get left behind, because either you're going to stay with the system or you're going to leave the matrix and go build your own, because that's the only way we're going to survive. Now, the 3 steps to awareness and escaping the matrix. First thing you got to do, just like we were talking about, follow the money, right? If you see a brand that you like or a corporation that you know of, see who owns it. See who owns that, right? Go down that rabbit hole. Before you buy, before you vote, before you watch anything, you need to ask who's profiting from this. Because trust me, somebody is profiting from it. So most media, most food brands, politicians, right? They all connect back to a small web of parent companies or corporations, right? And then from there, you'll see the donors who all lobbying for, certain politicians. You can always trace the money. So there's tools like Open Secret, the Good Food Institute, and corporate ownership databases who can reveal who's actually profiting from these corporations or from the product that you're buying or using, or the service that you're using. And also do that for charities. You'll be surprised with a lot of these charities what goes on. So if you're contributing to like the Red Cross or somebody like that, I would definitely see who's benefiting from that money, because 9 times out of 10, it's not the intended person. Now, also number 2 is to divest and redirect. So pull your money out the machine where possible. Spend your money at the local mom and pop stores versus going to the large corporations. Now, I know sometimes it gets a little harder because sometimes the mom and pop stores charge a little bit more because they can't compete with those corporations. But trust me, you're getting a better service, and you know that your money is helping the community locally and not going to the corporate giants. So buy from local farmers, credit unions over big banks, independent businesses, like I said, over chain stores. Every dollar you spend outside the system is a vote. And this redirects towards people and systems that align with your values than rather you feeding the monopolies that are controlling us. Now, number 3 is build community and self-sufficiency. Most radical act against corporate system is human independence. That's what they don't want. They don't want you to be independent. They want you to be dependent on the system, right? If they keep you on the system, they can benefit from your energy and keep extracting it from you. So what you need to do is be independent outside of it. Grow some of your own food, learn a skill, join a forum, a local or mutual network, within your community. The more you can meet your needs through community rather than consumption, then the less leverage the machine has over your life. And so those are really the main points I would like to make as far as escaping the matrix. We all can do this. These are very simple steps that we just take every day to slowly extricate ourselves from this web, right? Because it's all it is a web that we're tangled in, but we can get out of it, but we're going to have to do it together. It's not anything that any of us can do alone. As I said, these people have had hundreds of years start on their plan, right? It's time for us to get a plan together and come together.
500 years, at least.
Yeah, at least that, right? It's not 500, 600 years. But at the end of the day, there are steps that we can do, right? And I know you guys probably want to go out and tell family and friends about everything that's going on. We just said everybody ain't ready for this information, right? Everybody's not ready to wake up. And that's good for you. If you're getting it, maybe you need to find more like-minded people so you don't get discouraged. Because I'm going to tell you now, there's not going to be a lot of people who's going to support you in this effort, because everybody's been so indoctrinated and so ingrained into the system. That's all that they know. They're afraid to leave out of it, right? If you're brave enough to try to organize something within your community, or start spending your dollars locally, or benefiting off of the system some kind of way, then, hey, try to bring others on that want to go with you. Don't ever try to force anyone that's not ready.
I agree. I just want to add to that that you just need to really just do the knowledge. Just do the knowledge on the things that you're consuming, whether that's you're consuming it as food, you're consuming it as brain food, as soul food, spiritual food. Everything that we consume is a form of food that we're feeding ourselves on some level. So you really, it's up to you to do the study and research what you're consuming. What are you feeding your children? What are you letting your children listen to? All of these things are important, family. And it starts with you. It starts with us. We have to be the change that we want to see. I tell people this a lot, and let's bring it back into the title of our podcast. People are looking for their destiny. That means they're looking for their purpose. Sometimes when people are looking for that, they think that it's this whole big thing that they're supposed to be doing. No, it's what you're supposed to be doing, excuse me, as yourself. The small incremental things that you do to make yourself better, to make your family better. What that does is it brings us together as a collective to make us whole. Okay. So all of us, our destinies is it's really a small part. It's a small thing that we need to do while we're here on this earth to contribute to the collective. Okay. So that's what makes us be able to change the world. And one other thing I just want to touch on is you talked about the planetary shifts. We have another planetary shift coming up. Uranus going into Gemini. That's a huge, another outer planetary shift. All three outer planets have shifted, family. This is, like she said, is not a regular reset. Everything is changing. And if you don't change, you're not going to make it. And Portia's right. This show is about giving you positivity and solutions, but sometimes the solution's not always going to come to you positively because there's polarity in this world. You got a positive and a negative, and you need both for survival. Okay. So sometimes you need to hear a message. It may come across as negative, but it's not a negative message. It's a message that you need to hear, that sometimes you need to hear it in a raw way for it to get to you. Okay. So that's why, me, I'm a little militant. So I'm going to deliver things in that way sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's with love because I love all of us. And I just want us to understand our power, our purpose, and our position. That's all what Queens Up and Kings Up is about, is understanding those things and is now implementing those things to make your life better and your immediate family's life better. And when you do that, you're contributing to making the collective better. Peace and love. Make sure you are subscribed to us at Dreams, Dollar, and Destiny YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to NumeraLytics. Peace.
All right. Well said. I mean, damn, I gotta follow y'all too after all of that. But that's all right. That's all right. Go ahead and close it out and be the cleanup. The only thing I'll leave with everyone is it sounds very audacious, grandiose, what we need to do as far as unplugging and exiting out of this system. So don't become overwhelmed. Don't be discouraged. If you're coming away from this podcast, if you're watching it right when it aired on Monday and you want to know what you can do Monday night or Tuesday, because all of this, it's not going to happen overnight. So what you can do is do your best to make the best possible choices and take the best possible options each day. Portia mentioned some that you can do immediately, such as supporting your mom and pop small businesses and things of that nature. But just make those small incremental best choices. Choose to eat better. And I know it might sound very cynical and discouraging, knowing that every aspect of food is under control, but you can still make better choices. You can still choose that piece of fruit or that vegetable, even if it has, even if it was grown with pesticides, you know, you get some fruit wash and wash it off. That's still better than choosing that ultra processed Pop-Tart that's on the shelf there. So just make those small, better choices day in and day out, and that's the start. And then you just grow from there and get with your like-minded individuals. So I'm closing out with that. I'm Nick of Supreme Numerics, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode, on episode 5. Peace.
So I just want to end the show with the question of the week that we like to drop in the comment section. So the question of the week is, what small step can I take today to get out the matrix? Right? I kind of alluded to a few things that you could do, whether that's supporting your local mom and pop store, following the money, right, on a company or maybe a restaurant that you like going to, see who owns it, right? Follow the money. Also, community and self-sufficiency. Maybe try to find like-minded people online and come up with some ideas that you guys can create your own community, right? There's so many different things that I named, but what small step can you take today to get out the matrix, right? To get out of the corporate cycle, to get out the system. Because trust me, I would love nothing more than 1 million people get together today and say, hey, we're not going to work. If we can get 1 million people to get together, trust me, that will have a greater impact than any protest that you see down on Washington, right? Because when you affect these people money, that's when they start listening. So if we can all get together and come up with a great idea to slowly, right, extricate ourselves from this, then I think that we all are working for a greater and much positive future. So with that being said, this is another episode of Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny. I'm your host, Porsche with the Soul Car Studio, also joined with my colleagues, Nick with Supreme Numerics and Miss Queen B with NumeraLytics. We look forward to seeing you again next Monday. And if you love what we talked about tonight, please like and subscribe and share this video with someone else who can benefit from it. Until then, take care.
Peace.